Hello and welcome back to our channel. Did you know Buck Rogers premiered in 1979, during the sci-fi craze sparked by Star Wars? Let's explore how it became a fan favorite. Today, we're delving into the exciting world of Buck Rogers in the 25th century, the 1979 sci-fi series that captured the imagination of fans worldwide. Let's kick things off with the fascinating origin story of Buck Rogers, a character who's not just a hero of the future, but also a pioneer of modern science fiction. Buck Rogers first leapt onto the pages of literature in 1928 with the novella Armageddon 2419 AD, penned by the visionary writer Philip Francis Nolan. This groundbreaking story wasn't just a tale of futuristic adventure, it was a cultural phenomenon that tapped into the growing fascination with technology and space exploration during the early 20th century. At its core, Buck Rogers was the everyman thrown into extraordinary circumstances, a man frozen in time only to awaken in a dazzling, dangerous future. This premise captivated audiences, blending the intrigue of scientific progress with the timeless appeal of action-packed heroism. The character's relatability and courage in the face of the unknown quickly set him apart, and it wasn't long before Buck leapt beyond the confines of print. In 1929, just a year after his literary debut, Buck Rogers was transformed into a syndicated comic strip. Illustrated by Dick Calkins, the strip brought Buck's world to life with vivid artwork and serialized storytelling, making it a staple in newspapers across the United States. For many, this was their first taste of space adventures, and it paved the way for other legendary comic heroes like Flash Gordon and Superman. The strip didn't just entertain, it inspired a generation to dream of rocket ships, ray guns, and life among the stars. The impact of Buck Rogers didn't stop there. In 1932, the character made the jump to radio, captivating listeners with serialized dramas that transported them to the 25th century. For families gathered around their living room radios, Buck's adventures were a shared experience, complete with cliffhangers that kept fans eagerly tuning in week after week. The sound of rocket engines, futuristic weapons, and alien landscapes came alive in their imaginations, laying the groundwork for science fiction's dominance in multimedia storytelling. Fast forward to 1939, and Buck Rogers was ready to conquer the silver screen. Universal Pictures released a 12-chapter film serial starring Buster Crabbe as Buck, a name that would soon become synonymous with sci-fi heroics. These serials were thrilling, packed with daring escapades and groundbreaking special effects for their time. They became a must-see event for Saturday matinee audiences, cementing Buck Rogers as a household name. What makes Buck Rogers truly extraordinary is how the character's legacy evolved alongside society's own fascination with the future. From his early pulp magazine days to his dominance in comics, radio, and film, Buck Rogers became a symbol of optimism, courage, and the endless possibilities of human ingenuity. He wasn't just a product of his era, he shaped the collective imagination of the 20th century, creating a foundation upon which countless other science fiction stories would be built. So, while Armageddon 2419 AD was just the beginning, it sparked a phenomenon that has transcended decades. Buck Rogers wasn't merely a character, he became an icon of progress, adventure, and humanity's unyielding desire to explore the unknown. Now, let's take a closer look at how Star Wars, yes, the epic saga we all know and love, played a pivotal role in reviving Buck Rogers. By the late 1970s, science fiction was experiencing an unprecedented boom in popularity, and the genre was no longer just for niche audiences. George Lucas's Star Wars had redefined what sci-fi could be, blending groundbreaking special effects, thrilling action, and an engaging story that captivated viewers of all ages. Its success was nothing short of a cultural revolution, and Hollywood studios were eager to ride this intergalactic wave. Enter Universal Pictures. In the wake of Star Wars' massive box office domination, Universal began scouring its archives for dormant sci-fi properties that could be reimagined for a new generation. Buck Rogers, with his rich legacy and proven appeal, seemed like the perfect candidate. This was a character who had already conquered pulp magazines, comic strips, and even film serials decades earlier, and Universal saw an opportunity to bring him into the modern age of cinema and television. The project started as a modest idea, a made-for-TV movie that would reintroduce Buck Rogers to audiences. But as the creative team delved deeper into production, they realized they might have something bigger on their hands. With Glenn A. Larson at the helm, a producer fresh off the success of Battlestar Galactica, the vision for Buck Rogers in the 25th century expanded. Inspired by Star Wars, Larson infused the project with high-energy storytelling, dazzling visuals, and a touch of humor to make it accessible to both new viewers and longtime fans. Universal made a bold decision. Instead of limiting the pilot to television, they released it theatrically in March 1979. This move turned out to be a masterstroke. The film grossed over $21 million at the North American box office, a remarkable feat given its relatively modest $3.5 million budget. Its success wasn't limited to the US. The movie found an enthusiastic audience worldwide, proving that Buck Rogers was still a force to be reckoned with in the science fiction landscape. But what made the theatrical release so compelling? It wasn't just the timing, although Star Wars had certainly primed audiences for more space adventures. The film delivered a mix of futuristic spectacle and old-fashioned heroism, with Buck portrayed as a relatable, everyman character thrust into extraordinary circumstances. This was a hero who could be funny, resourceful, and courageous, making him instantly likable. Add to that a strong supporting cast, elaborate set designs, and an unforgettable robot sidekick in Tweaky, and you had a recipe for success. The theatrical pilot also served as a testing ground for Universal's next big move, a full-fledged TV series. Encouraged by the movie's popularity, NBC commissioned Buck Rogers in the 25th Century as a weekly series, which debuted later that year in September 1979. The film's success essentially acted as a springboard, ensuring that Buck's adventures wouldn't be confined to a single story but would instead unfold over multiple episodes, capturing the imagination of viewers week after week. Interestingly, the theatrical release wasn't just about box office numbers, it was a statement. Universal wanted to prove that Buck Rogers could compete with big-screen sci-fi hits, even though it started on TV. By taking this gamble, they not only revitalized the character but also positioned him as a major player in the late 1970s sci-fi resurgence. So, in a way, Star Wars didn't just inspire the revival of Buck Rogers, it challenged Universal to think bigger and bolder. It encouraged them to take a character from the past and reintroduce him in a way that felt fresh and relevant, proving that even a hero from 1928 could thrive in the age of interstellar blockbusters. And with that, Buck Rogers in the 25th Century soared into the cultural zeitgeist, forever linking its revival to the Star Wars phenomenon. When Buck Rogers debuted in theaters as a feature-length film, it was crafted with a broader audience in mind, including teens and adults who were already hooked on the edgier tone of sci-fi hits like Star Wars. However, once it transitioned to television, significant changes were made to ensure it aligned with the family-friendly expectations of network programming in the late 1970s. One of the most notable adjustments was the toning down of the dialogue. The theatrical version had a sharper, slightly more adult edge, with Buck occasionally delivering quips that leaned into innuendo. For instance, Tweaky, Buck's quirky robot companion, originally had a line about freezing my ball bearings off, a humorous but risque comment that was deemed too much for primetime TV. For the television cut, this line was swapped for the more innocuous "my micro discs are turning blue," which preserved the humor but removed any suggestive undertones. Similarly, other moments of dialogue and action were softened to make Buck's world feel more suitable for younger viewers. In the theatrical version, there's a scene where Buck delivers a well-aimed kick to Tiger Man, one of the villains, in a particularly sensitive area. This moment was entirely cut from the TV version, likely to avoid complaints from parents about overly aggressive or suggestive content. Even Buck's witty, sometimes flirtatious banter with Wilma Deering was dialed back for television. While the theatrical version leaned into Buck's roguish charm, the TV edit made his interactions more straightforward, keeping the focus on the adventure rather than any romantic subtext. The changes were subtle but reflected the broader cultural shift required to make the series palatable to a wide audience, including children who might have been drawn to the show's colorful visuals and futuristic gadgets. Interestingly, these edits weren't just about cleaning up content, they also shaped how the character of Buck Rogers was perceived. In the theatrical cut, Buck came across as a wisecracking, slightly cynical hero, a man out of time but always ready with a sarcastic remark. On television, his character was reimagined as a more earnest, all-American hero, someone who could be admired as much for his moral integrity as for his quick thinking and bravery. Fans of the show often debate which version is superior. The theatrical cut is praised for its boldness and humor, while the TV version is seen as more accessible and family-friendly. Some viewers even argue that the edits stripped away some of the originality and edge that made Buck such a compelling character. Others appreciate how the toned-down version allowed the series to reach a broader audience and enjoy greater longevity on network television. One particularly amusing debate among fans revolves around a specific moment in the Planet of the Slave Girls episode. In both versions, Buck delivers a line that sounds like, "There's something wrong with your Funk and Wagnalls." For the record, Funk and Wagnalls is a well-known publisher of encyclopedias and dictionaries, but many fans still swear Buck was saying something else entirely. It's one of those quirky mysteries that keep fans re-watching the series, trying to decipher every line. Ultimately, the dual versions of Awakening highlight the balancing act between artistic vision and commercial appeal. The theatrical release allowed the creative team to push boundaries, while the TV version ensured the show could be embraced by audiences of all ages. On the surface, the Space Shuttle might seem like just another futuristic spacecraft in a sci-fi show, but this name carries a subtle yet significant nod to real-world space exploration. It's a direct reference to NASA's Ranger program, a series of lunar missions that played a pivotal role in the early days of space science. NASA's Ranger program in the 1960s aimed to capture close-up images of the Moon. These missions were stepping stones for future human exploration. While some missions succeeded brilliantly, others, like Ranger 3, met with less favorable outcomes. Launched on January 26, 1962, Ranger 3 was designed to transmit high-resolution images of the Moon back to Earth. However, a technical malfunction caused the spacecraft to veer off course, missing its lunar target by over 22,000 miles. Instead of fulfilling its mission, Ranger 3 ended up drifting aimlessly into space, becoming one of the many poignant reminders of the challenges faced during humanity's first steps into the cosmos. The choice to name Buck's shuttle Ranger 3 is a clever homage to this real-life piece of space history. In many ways, it mirrors Buck's own journey. Much like the wayward lunar probe, Buck finds himself lost in the vast expanse of space, a man out of time and place. Just as Ranger 3 ventured into the unknown, Buck awakens 500 years in the future, navigating a world he doesn't recognize yet must learn to survive in. This connection also speaks to the show's deeper themes of exploration, resilience, and the indomitable human spirit. Buck's journey, much like NASA's, is one of trial and error, discovery, and perseverance. By tying Buck's fictional adventure to the real-world history of space exploration, the show anchors its futuristic narrative in a reality that viewers could relate to, especially in an era when the space race was still fresh in public memory. For fans of science and space, this little Easter egg is a treasure. It's a reminder that science fiction often draws inspiration from real science, blending fact with imagination to create compelling stories. By referencing Ranger 3, the creators of Buck Rogers not only paid tribute to NASA's groundbreaking efforts but also subtly highlighted the risks and rewards of venturing into the unknown. But there's another layer to this connection. The failure of Ranger 3 was not the end of the story, it was a stepping stone to greater success. Subsequent missions in the Ranger program refined techniques, leading to the iconic Ranger 7, which in 1964 sent back the first close-up images of the Moon. Similarly, Buck's initial disorientation in the 25th century is not the end of his story, it's the beginning of his transformation into a hero who bridges the past and the future. Whether you're a space enthusiast or a sci-fi fan, the naming of Ranger 3 in Buck Rogers is a brilliant detail that adds depth to the story. It's a tribute to the pioneers of space exploration, a reflection of Buck's own journey, and a subtle reminder that even our failures can propel us toward greatness. Imagine a version of Buck Rogers in the 25th century where the titular role wasn't played by Gerard but by none other than Kurt Russell. That's right, back in the development stages, Glenn A. Larson, the creative force behind the show, had his sights set on Kurt Russell as his ideal Buck Rogers. At the time, Russell was one of Hollywood's most promising young talents, fresh off a series of well-received performances and already a household name thanks to his early Disney roles. So why didn't Russell don the futuristic jumpsuit and take us on an interstellar adventure? The reason comes down to timing and career strategy. By the late 1970s, Russell was in the midst of a pivotal career transition. Having spent much of his early years in television and family-friendly movies, he was determined to establish himself as a serious actor in feature films. This decision was driven in part by his near miss with another iconic sci-fi role, Han Solo in Star Wars. Russell had been among the final contenders for the part, and while he ultimately didn't land the gig, the experience fueled his desire to focus on a big-screen career. Turning down the role of Buck Rogers may have been a difficult choice, but it was a calculated one. Russell was gearing up for roles in films like Escape from New York and The Thing, both of which would solidify his reputation as a versatile actor with a knack for playing complex, edgy characters. With Russell out of the running, the role of Buck fell to Gerard, who brought his own unique qualities to the character. Unlike Russell, Gerard wasn't yet a household name, but he had a strong presence and a charming everyman appeal that helped him make the character his own. However, Gerard's time as Buck was not without its challenges, both on and off the set. Gerard's portrayal of Buck leaned heavily on the character's relatable, down-to-earth qualities. He wasn't a larger-than-life superhero, he was a man who found himself in extraordinary circumstances and rose to meet the challenge. This approach made Buck accessible to viewers, especially in contrast to the more stoic or grandiose sci-fi heroes of the era. Yet, Gerard's tenure was also marked by behind-the-scenes controversy, as he frequently clashed with producers over the direction of the show. Gerard wanted a darker, more serious tone for Buck Rogers, one that mirrored the gravitas of the pilot movie. He often rewrote his own lines and pushed back against comedic elements that he felt undermined the character's depth. While some fans appreciated his commitment to the role, others argue that his disagreements with the creative team disrupted the show's cohesion and led to a contentious working environment. It's impossible not to wonder how Kurt Russell might have shaped the role differently. Given his natural charisma and penchant for blending humor with intensity, Russell could have brought a fresh energy to Buck, perhaps leaning further into the roguish charm that the character occasionally displayed. His background in both TV and film might also have helped bridge the gap between the cinematic ambitions of the pilot and the episodic nature of the TV series. On the other hand, Gerard's performance gave Buck a grounded quality that resonated with audiences and set the show apart from its contemporaries. While the idea of Russell as Buck Rogers is an intriguing what-if for sci-fi fans, it's worth appreciating how Gerard made the role his own despite the challenges. In the end, Russell's decision to pass on Buck Rogers helped define his career trajectory, allowing him to take on iconic roles in films that would cement his legacy as a Hollywood legend. Meanwhile, Gerard's portrayal ensured that Buck Rogers in the 25th century left an indelible mark on the sci-fi genre. It's a fascinating reminder of how casting choices can shape not just a single show, but the entire trajectory of an actor's career, and, in this case, the legacy of a beloved character. So, next time you watch Buck Rogers, take a moment to imagine how different things might have been with Kurt Russell at the helm. Would the show have been a hit? Would Russell's career have taken a different turn? These unanswered questions are part of what makes Hollywood history so endlessly intriguing. Behind the glitzy sets and futuristic gadgets of Buck Rogers in the 25th century was a very real struggle over the tone of the series, one led by its star, Gerard. While audiences might remember Buck as the charismatic hero in navigating the challenges of the 25th century, Gerard was also wrestling with challenges of his own. He had a clear vision for Buck, one that often clashed with the lighter, more comedic direction that producers envisioned for the show. From the start, Gerard believed Buck Rogers should lean into the serious tone established by the theatrical pilot, Awakening. The film had elements of wit, but its overarching narrative was grounded in themes of survival, disorientation, and human resilience. Gerard felt this depth was key to Buck's character. After all, this was a man thrust 500 years into the future, grappling with the loss of his entire world. In Gerard's eyes, the show should reflect these weighty stakes rather than rely on humor and camp. However, NBC and the production team had other ideas. They wanted Buck Rogers to appeal to a broad audience, including families, and believed that injecting humor and light-hearted moments would make the series more accessible. This creative divide quickly became a point of contention. Gerard frequently found himself at odds with producers, particularly over what he viewed as overly comedic lines or situations that diminished Buck's integrity as a hero. Gerard didn't just voice his concerns, he acted on them. Reports from the set reveal that he would often rewrite his own dialogue, removing jokes or rephrasing lines to better suit his vision of the character. He even took it a step further by attempting to rework entire scripts, much to the frustration of the show's writers and producers. While some fans appreciated his commitment to portraying Buck as a serious, capable protagonist, his actions created a ripple effect of tension behind the scenes. The clashes reached a boiling point midway through the first season when writers Ann Collins and Alan Brennert left the show, reportedly due to frustrations with Gerard's insistence on altering scripts. NBC eventually stepped in, issuing threats of legal action if Gerard continued to disrupt production. Despite the warnings, Gerard remained vocal about his dissatisfaction. His frustrations weren't limited to the comedic tone either. He also took issue with what he perceived as a lack of character development and narrative depth in many episodes. Gerard wanted Buck to be more than just a swashbuckling adventurer. He envisioned him as a complex, multidimensional character navigating the cultural and ethical dilemmas of a futuristic society. These creative disagreements came to a head during the actors' strike that interrupted production. In an interview with Starlog magazine during the hiatus, Gerard candidly expressed his hope that the show wouldn't be renewed for a second season, citing his dissatisfaction with how the series was being handled. It was a rare, unfiltered glimpse into the frustrations that had been simmering on set. Interestingly, when the show did return for its second season, it adopted a darker, more serious tone, something Gerard had long advocated for. The new direction saw Buck, Wilma, and Tweaky embark on a mission aboard the spaceship Searcher, exploring themes of isolation, morality, and humanity's search for its roots. Yet even with these changes, Gerard's clashes with the production team didn't entirely subside, and the ratings ultimately declined, leading to the series' cancellation after just 13 episodes in Season 2. Gerard's determination to uphold his vision for Buck Rogers remains a divisive topic among fans and industry insiders. On one hand, his commitment to character integrity and meaningful storytelling is commendable. On the other hand, his approach to addressing these issues, rewriting scripts without approval and publicly voicing his frustrations, added fuel to an already tense production environment. One of the standout elements of Buck Rogers in the 25th century was Tweaky, the pint-sized robot sidekick who brought both humor and heart to the series. Initially, Tweaky was designed to communicate only through electronic beeps and boops, interpreted by Dr. Theopolis. However, this concept felt too derivative of Star Wars R2-D2 and C-3PO dynamic, prompting the producers to give Tweaky a unique voice and personality. Enter Mel Blanc, the legendary man of 1,000 voices. Known for iconic characters like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and Porky Pig, Blanc transformed Tweaky into a character with depth and charm. His gravelly, humorous tone, paired with the instantly recognizable catchphrase, "Biddy biddy biddy," gave Tweaky a quirky personality that resonated with audiences of all ages. Blanc's nuanced delivery brought Tweaky to life in unexpected ways. Whether cracking jokes, showing concern for Buck and Wilma, or trading witty remarks with Dr. Theopolis, Tweaky felt remarkably human. Blanc's decision to infuse the robot's voice with warmth and sass elevated Tweaky from a simple companion to a fan-favorite character. Beyond being just a comedic foil, Tweaky often served as an emotional anchor for the series, injecting levity into tense moments while also providing wisdom when needed. Blanc's performance turned what could have been a background character into a memorable part of the Buck Rogers legacy. Even as he juggled a packed schedule of other projects, Blanc's dedication to the role was unwavering. His work on Tweaky remains one of the highlights of the series and a testament to his unparalleled talent in bringing animated and live-action characters to life. In one of the most delightful and nostalgic moments of Buck Rogers in the 25th century, the series welcomed back the original Buck Rogers himself, Buster Crabbe. For fans of the 1939 Buck Rogers film serial, Crabbe's appearance in the Season 1 episode Planet of the Slave Girls wasn't just a fun cameo, it was a heartfelt homage to the character's enduring legacy and a full-circle moment that bridged generations of sci-fi storytelling. Buster Crabbe's connection to Buck Rogers goes back more than 40 years before the TV series. In 1939, Crabbe starred as Buck in Universal Pictures' 12-chapter serial, bringing the pulp hero to life for audiences enthralled by the golden age of science fiction. His portrayal defined the character for decades, establishing Buck as a daring, confident adventurer who wasn't afraid to take on cosmic villains. For many fans, Crabbe was Buck Rogers, and his portrayal left an indelible mark on the character's legacy. Fast forward to 1979, and the new Buck Rogers in the 25th Century TV series was blazing its own trail. But when the opportunity arose to honor the original Buck, the show's producers jumped at the chance. Casting Crabbe as Brigadier Gordon, an aging yet formidable military figure, was a masterstroke, a clever nod to the character's roots while showcasing Crabbe's continued charisma. Crabbe's appearance in Planet of the Slave Girls was more than a nostalgic cameo, it was a playful and heartfelt moment of meta-commentary. His character's quip, "I've been doing this since before you were born," was both a tongue-in-cheek acknowledgement of his iconic role and a humorous line that fit perfectly within the episode. For longtime fans, it was a wink to the past. For new viewers, it added depth to the episode, hinting at the rich history behind the Buck Rogers franchise. The inclusion of Crabbe also underscored the timeless appeal of the Buck Rogers story. By bringing the original actor back into the fold, the series reminded audiences that Buck's adventures were part of a larger cultural legacy, one that had spanned decades and inspired countless sci-fi narratives. Crabbe's appearance was a bridge between the swashbuckling serials of the 1930s and the sleek, futuristic vision of the 1970s series, highlighting how the core of Buck's character, courage, wit, and a sense of adventure, remained unchanged. It's worth noting that Crabbe wasn't just a one-hit wonder in the world of sci-fi. Before his turn as Buck Rogers, he had also starred as another legendary hero, Flash Gordon. His work in both franchises solidified his reputation as the king of serials, making his return to Buck Rogers all the more significant. In fact, Brigadier Gordon's name was a subtle nod to Crabbe's dual legacy, blending his roles as both Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon into a single character. Behind the scenes, Crabbe's involvement was met with enthusiasm from the cast and crew. Gerard, who played the new Buck, reportedly admired Crabbe's contributions to the genre and appreciated the opportunity to share the screen with such an icon. Their scenes together exuded mutual respect, with Crabbe's Brigadier Gordon serving as a mentor figure, passing the torch to the new generation. Sadly, Planet of the Slave Girls would mark one of Crabbe's final on-screen appearances. He passed away in 1983 at the age of 75, leaving behind a legacy that continues to inspire sci-fi fans and creators alike. His return to Buck Rogers in the 25th century wasn't just a nostalgic nod, it was a fitting tribute to an actor who had helped shape the very foundations of the genre. Buster Crabbe's cameo is a reminder of how Buck Rogers has always been more than just a story about space adventures. It's a celebration of the imagination, perseverance, and heroism that define science fiction. By honoring Crabbe's contributions, the series not only paid tribute to its roots but also reinforced the enduring appeal of Buck Rogers for generations to come. Erin Gray's portrayal of Colonel Wilma Deering in Buck Rogers in the 25th century was nothing short of iconic. As one of the few strong, capable female leads in 1970s sci-fi television, she brought a mix of intelligence, elegance, and authority to the role. However, behind the polished facade of her character, Gray faced her own set of challenges, most notably, a contentious relationship with her hair color that became a surprising focal point during the show's production. Initially, Gray wasn't even on board for the TV series. After playing Wilma in the theatrical pilot Awakening, she turned down the opportunity to reprise her role for the weekly series. At the time, she was focused on pursuing other projects and wasn't convinced that transitioning to television full-time was the right move for her career. However, after reconsidering, and perhaps sensing the cultural impact the show could have, she decided to return. Her comeback came with a catch. Producers, eager to align Wilma's appearance with the sleek, futuristic aesthetic of the series, insisted that Gray dye her naturally brunette hair blonde. Their reasoning was likely tied to the Hollywood trend of the time, where lighter hair was often associated with glamour, particularly for leading women in science fiction and action genres. For Gray, this requirement was less than ideal. She reportedly disliked the change, finding the upkeep of her newly dyed locks both tedious and frustrating. Beyond the physical discomfort of constant hair treatments, Gray felt that the blonde hair didn't suit her or the character she envisioned for Wilma. As a no-nonsense military officer, Wilma didn't need the extra glam. Her strength and intelligence were more than enough to make her shine. Gray didn't like the change, but she kept going, and her blonde-haired Wilma became a key part of Season 1. By Season 2, though, her frustrations hit a breaking point. With the show taking on a darker tone and shifting focus to deeper storylines, the producers finally relented and allowed her to return to her natural brunette hair color. The change not only pleased Gray but also marked a subtle shift in Wilma's character, giving her a more grounded and authoritative look that complemented the series' new direction. Interestingly, the hair drama wasn't just about aesthetics, it reflected broader issues of agency and creative input for actors in the television industry. Gray's initial reluctance to dye her hair and her eventual victory in reverting to her natural color underscore the challenges actors often face in balancing personal identity with the demands of their roles. For Gray, reclaiming her brunette hair wasn't just a cosmetic change, it was a way of asserting her vision for Wilma as a character who didn't need superficial enhancements to be compelling. Fans of the series often debate which version of Wilma, blonde or brunette, best represents the character. While the blonde-haired Wilma is arguably the more glamorous, the brunette version aligns more closely with Gray's original vision of a strong, no-nonsense leader. Both interpretations, however, showcase Gray's talent and versatility, proving that Wilma's impact transcended hair color. Behind the scenes, Gray's hair journey also highlighted the sometimes arbitrary demands placed on actors, especially women, in the entertainment industry. In an era when physical appearance was often prioritized over substance, Gray's eventual triumph in returning to her natural look was a small but significant victory, one that resonated with fans who admired her strength both on and off the screen. Wilma Deering remains one of the most memorable characters in Buck Rogers in the 25th century, thanks in no small part to Erin Gray's portrayal. Whether blonde or brunette, she brought depth, dignity, and determination to the role, making her a standout figure in the male-dominated sci-fi landscape of the time. Season 2 of Buck Rogers in the 25th century was a significant departure from the light-hearted, action-packed adventures of its debut season. Buck, Wilma, and Tweaky traded the comforts of futuristic Earth for life aboard the Searcher, a sleek spaceship tasked with finding the lost tribes of humanity scattered across the galaxy. While this new direction introduced deeper themes and a more somber tone, it ultimately divided the fanbase and marked the beginning of the show's decline. The shift to a darker narrative was largely driven by star Gerard, who had long expressed dissatisfaction with the comedic elements of the first season. Gerard envisioned Buck Rogers as a serious exploration of humanity's future, filled with ethical dilemmas and high-stakes drama. Season 2 was, in many ways, an attempt to align the series with Gerard's vision. Gone were the campy villains and episodic escapades of Season 1. In their place came stories that delved into existential questions, such as humanity's place in the universe, the consequences of nuclear war, and the search for meaning in a fragmented future. The shift in tone alienated many fans who had grown attached to the vibrant, adventurous spirit of the first season. For these viewers, the charm of Buck Rogers lay in its balance of humor, action, and spectacle. Season 2's heavier themes and slower pacing felt like a jarring departure, leaving some to wonder if they were watching the same show. Another significant change in Season 2 was the reconfiguration of the main cast. Several familiar faces from the first season, including Dr. Hure and Dr. Theopolis, were absent, as the series focused on the Searcher's crew. Joining Buck, Wilma, and Tweaky were new characters like Admiral Asimov, the stoic commander of the Searcher, and Hawk, a half-human, half-bird alien warrior. Hawk, in particular, was a standout addition, bringing a brooding intensity and an intriguing backstory that added depth to the series. Despite these fresh elements, the chemistry and humor that had defined the first season felt diminished. The absence of Earth-based adventures and recurring characters left a void that even Hawk's compelling arc couldn't fully fill. Tweaky, once a source of comic relief, was given a more subdued role, while Wilma's screen time and character development were noticeably reduced, a change that disappointed many fans of Erin Gray's portrayal. Behind the scenes, the production faced additional challenges. The season was shortened to just 13 episodes due to the ongoing actors' strike and declining ratings. Budget constraints also became evident, with fewer elaborate sets and a noticeable reliance on stock footage. These limitations, combined with the darker tone, created a series that felt smaller in scope despite its ambitious themes. The premiere episode of Season 2, Time of the Hawk, set the stage for the new direction, introducing Hawk and establishing the Searcher's mission. While the episode received praise for its emotional depth and strong performances, subsequent episodes struggled to maintain the momentum. The slower pacing and introspective storytelling clashed with audience expectations, leading to a sharp decline in viewership. For Gerard, Season 2 was a bittersweet experience. On one hand, it represented the fulfillment of his desire for a more serious approach to Buck Rogers. On the other, the ratings drop and mixed fan reactions underscored the risks of straying too far from the formula that had initially captured viewers' hearts. By the end of the season, NBC decided to cancel the series, marking the end of Buck Rogers in the 25th century. One of the standout features of Buck Rogers in the 25th century was its ability to attract an impressive roster of guest stars. From established Hollywood icons to rising talents, the series offered a veritable who's who of notable names. These appearances not only added flair to the show but also drew in curious viewers eager to see their favorite stars in unexpected, futuristic roles. Let's start with Jamie Lee Curtis, a name synonymous with Hollywood royalty and one of the most recognizable actresses of her time. By the late 1970s, Curtis had already cemented her place as the Scream Queen thanks to her breakout role in Halloween. Her guest appearance on Buck Rogers gave fans a chance to see her in a different light, swapping slasher horror for intergalactic adventure. Curtis brought depth and charisma to her role, proving she could shine in any genre. Then there was Gary Coleman, a child star best known for his lovable role as Arnold Jackson on Diff'rent Strokes. At the height of his fame, Coleman was a household name, beloved for his sharp wit and signature catchphrase, "What you talkin' 'bout, Willis?" On Buck Rogers, he stepped into a futuristic setting, showcasing a different side of his talent. His appearance was a delightful surprise for fans and added a layer of levity to the series that complemented its mix of action and humor. Jerry Orbach, known for his role on Law and Order, brought gravitas to Buck Rogers. His strong screen presence made his brief appearance unforgettable. His involvement underscored the series' ability to attract talent from across the entertainment spectrum. The inclusion of high-profile guest stars wasn't just about adding star power, it was a savvy move by the producers to keep the series fresh and engaging. Each new face brought unique energy to the show, helping to create a rich and varied tapestry of characters. For viewers, these guest appearances added an element of excitement, as they never knew which familiar face might show up next. These appearances also served to elevate the show's profile, attracting fans of the guest stars who might not have tuned in otherwise. For example, Jamie Lee Curtis's fans from Halloween likely tuned in to see her in a sci-fi setting, while Jerry Orbach's theater followers were curious to see him in a completely different role. This crossover appeal helped broaden the show's audience and solidified its place in pop culture. When Buck Rogers in the 25th century debuted in the UK, it didn't just land, it soared, capturing the attention of audiences hungry for futuristic adventures. What makes this success even more remarkable is that it managed to beat out one of the country's most beloved sci-fi institutions, Doctor Who. The two shows aired head-to-head in the same Saturday evening time slot, creating a high-stakes battle for viewers. To the surprise of many, Buck Rogers frequently emerged victorious, a testament to its universal appeal and the growing influence of American television in global markets. The heart of this rivalry was a fascinating contrast in styles. Doctor Who, by the late 1970s, was a well-established British institution with a loyal fanbase. Known for its cerebral plots, quirky humor, and low-budget charm, it had become a cultural icon. However, by the time Buck Rogers arrived, Doctor Who was entering its 18th season, and some viewers felt its formula was growing a bit stale. Enter Buck Rogers, with its glossy production values, fast-paced action, and charismatic lead. The show's futuristic sets, flashy special effects, and colorful costumes were a stark departure from Doctor Who's more modest visual approach. For British audiences, Buck Rogers offered something fresh, a spacefaring hero who brought an air of American swagger and cinematic spectacle to their screens. The competition wasn't just a numbers game, it became a cultural talking point. Saturday evenings had long been prime television territory in the UK, and Doctor Who's dominance in the time slot was almost a given. However, with Buck Rogers winning the ratings battle week after week, the BBC faced mounting pressure. Eventually, they made the difficult decision to move Doctor Who to a weekday evening slot for its next season, a significant shift that marked the end of an era for the iconic series. Additionally, Buck Rogers benefited from its timing. The late 1970s and early 1980s were a golden era for space-themed entertainment, fueled by the massive success of Star Wars. British audiences, like their American counterparts, were captivated by stories set in the far reaches of the galaxy, and Buck Rogers fit perfectly into this cultural moment. Another factor was the sheer star power and charm of Gerard as Buck. His portrayal of the titular hero, equal parts daring adventurer and relatable everyman, resonated with viewers. Combined with the strong presence of Erin as Colonel Wilma Deering and the lovable antics of Tweaky, the cast created a dynamic that was both fun and engaging. Despite its success, Buck Rogers didn't completely overshadow Doctor Who's legacy. While the latter faced challenges during this period, it remained a beloved part of British pop culture and eventually found renewed success with its modern revival in 2005. Meanwhile, Buck Rogers burned brightly but briefly, with its two-season run leaving a lasting impression despite its relatively short lifespan. In retrospect, the UK ratings rivalry between these two iconic shows highlights the shifting dynamics of global television at the time. Buck Rogers represented the growing influence of American sci-fi, with its big-budget aesthetic and emphasis on spectacle. Doctor Who, on the other hand, embodied the enduring charm of British storytelling, with its focus on clever plots and imaginative world-building. Both shows have their place in sci-fi history, but for a brief moment in the late 1970s, Buck Rogers proved that even a venerable institution like Doctor Who could be challenged when the stars aligned. By 1982, Buck Rogers in the 25th century had already carved its place in pop culture. Its influence extended beyond television and into the rapidly expanding world of video games with Sega's release of Buck Rogers, Planet of Zoom. This arcade game was inspired by the spirit of Buck's adventures, but it took some creative liberties that made it a unique addition to the franchise. At first glance, Planet of Zoom appeared to capture the essence of Buck Rogers: fast-paced space combat, futuristic landscapes, and a quest for survival in the galaxy. Players piloted a sleek spacecraft through an array of colorful, 3D-like environments, dodging obstacles and blasting enemies in a race against the clock. For its time, the game was a visual marvel, with Sega employing cutting-edge technology to create a sense of depth and speed that stood out in crowded arcades. Interestingly, while the game bore Buck Rogers' name, the character himself was notably absent. Instead, players took control of an unnamed pilot, navigating through various levels that felt more like generic space battles than a direct tie-in to the show. This absence raised eyebrows among fans who expected to see Buck in action, complete with his signature charisma and charm. Sega's primary goal was to create a game that could appeal to a wide audience, including those unfamiliar with the series. By focusing on universal gameplay mechanics like shooting and dodging, Sega ensured that Planet of Zoom could stand on its own merits, rather than relying solely on the Buck Rogers brand. Despite this disconnect, the game did carry subtle nods to the franchise's themes. The concept of interstellar travel, the high-energy battles, and the sense of exploration were all reminiscent of Buck's adventures. For fans of the show, it was easy to imagine themselves piloting the Ranger 3 through treacherous space routes, even if the narrative links were thin. What truly set Planet of Zoom apart was its innovative gameplay. The use of pseudo-3D graphics gave players the sensation of zooming through space at breakneck speeds, a feature that was groundbreaking for the time. The game's responsive controls and escalating difficulty made it both accessible for casual players and challenging for arcade enthusiasts. Planet of Zoom became a hit in arcades and was later ported to home consoles like the Atari 2600, ColecoVision, and Sega SG-1000. While the home versions couldn't replicate the visual splendor of the arcade experience, they brought the thrill of space combat into living rooms, ensuring that Planet of Zoom reached an even wider audience. For fans of Buck Rogers, the game was a mixed bag. On one hand, it offered a thrilling sci-fi experience that echoed the show's adventurous spirit. On the other, the lack of a clear connection to the character or storyline left some feeling that the Buck Rogers name was little more than a marketing tool. When we think of Buck Rogers in the 25th century, Princess Ardala often comes to mind as one of the series' most iconic villains, equal parts cunning, captivating, and unpredictable. But behind Ardala's ambitions loomed another figure, her father, Emperor Draco, portrayed by the legendary Joseph Wiseman. Though Draco's screen time in the Buck Rogers pilot film was brief, his character left an outsized impact, thanks in part to Wiseman's commanding presence and the creative choices that followed. Joseph Wiseman was no stranger to playing memorable villains. By the time he stepped into the role of Emperor Draco, he was already famous for portraying the titular antagonist in Dr. No, the first James Bond film. His performance in that 1962 classic had cemented him as one of Hollywood's quintessential on-screen villains, bringing a sense of gravitas and menace to every role he played. Casting him as Draco in Buck Rogers was a brilliant move, instantly adding depth and credibility to the character, even with limited dialogue. Draco's presence in the pilot film, while fleeting, was pivotal. Appearing as a hologram near the film's conclusion, he exuded an air of authority and menace that underscored Ardala's motivations and ambitions. His role wasn't just as a father figure but as the looming force behind Ardala's schemes, a reminder that her plans for conquest were driven not only by personal ambition but also by the expectations of her powerful lineage. The decision to elevate Draco's profile in merchandise also highlights the influence of Wiseman's portrayal. His reputation as Dr. No undoubtedly added to the mystique of Draco, making him an appealing figure for fans and collectors alike. In the world of sci-fi merchandise, villains often hold as much allure as heroes, and Draco's commanding image fit perfectly alongside the more action-oriented characters of Buck, Wilma, and Tweaky. Wiseman's portrayal of Draco was also a subtle reminder of the narrative depth Buck Rogers aspired to achieve. While much of the series focused on Buck's heroics and light-hearted adventures, characters like Draco hinted at a more complex universe, one filled with power struggles, political intrigue, and the weight of familial expectations. His presence added layers to Ardala's character, making her more than just a one-dimensional antagonist. Beyond his role as Draco, Wiseman's participation in Buck Rogers serves as an interesting connection between two iconic franchises, James Bond and Buck Rogers. Both series, in their own ways, defined popular culture, with Dr. No setting the stage for decades of spy thrillers and Buck Rogers influencing generations of sci-fi storytelling. Having Wiseman appear in Buck Rogers was a nod to his enduring legacy as a master of villainy, bridging two distinct yet equally impactful genres. One of the more curious chapters in the history of Buck Rogers in the 25th century is how its original theatrical pilot, Awakening, was handled in the United Kingdom. While American audiences were introduced to the series through the pilot-turned-film in 1979, British fans faced an unexpected delay. Remarkably, the Buck Rogers pilot wasn't broadcast on British television until 1982, several years after the series had already concluded. To understand the significance of this delay, it's worth revisiting the pivotal role that Awakening played in introducing Buck Rogers to a new generation. Released theatrically in the United States, the film was a strategic move by Universal Pictures to capitalize on the growing appetite for sci-fi after the massive success of Star Wars. The pilot introduced viewers to Buck's journey, a 20th-century astronaut who finds himself catapulted 500 years into the future, navigating a world of high-tech intrigue, political conflicts, and interstellar adventure. The film's success in U.S. theaters helped generate buzz for the subsequent television series, which launched later that year. However, in the UK, the approach was different. British audiences were introduced to Buck Rogers through the TV series itself, which aired on the ITV network in 1980. Episodes were shown out of chronological order, with the feature-length Planet of the Slave Girls serving as the series' unofficial debut on British screens. The decision not to air Awakening as the starting point created a unique experience for British viewers. Without the pilot's exposition, they were thrust directly into Buck's futuristic adventures, missing key elements of his origin story. Details about how Buck ended up in the 25th century, his initial disorientation, and his first encounters with characters like Wilma Deering and Dr. Hewer were left unexplained. This lack of context didn't seem to hinder the series' popularity, as Buck Rogers quickly became a hit in the UK, winning its time slot against formidable competition like Doctor Who. However, the absence of Awakening left a gap for British fans eager to understand the full scope of Buck's story. By the time the pilot finally aired on British television in 1982, the series had already ended, and its narrative arc was complete. For many viewers, the delayed release of the pilot felt like discovering a missing puzzle piece, a chance to see where Buck's adventures truly began. The reasons for this delay remain somewhat unclear, though they likely involve licensing and distribution agreements between Universal and ITV. The decision to prioritize the series over the pilot may also have been influenced by scheduling constraints or a belief that British audiences would respond more enthusiastically to the episodic format. When Awakening finally made its British television debut, it was met with a mix of excitement and nostalgia. For longtime fans, it offered a new perspective on a show they already loved, filling in gaps and deepening their appreciation for Buck's character. For newer viewers, it served as an unexpected bonus, a cinematic introduction to a hero they had come to admire through the series. In retrospect, the delayed release of the pilot highlights the unique ways in which international audiences experience media. While Awakening was integral to launching Buck Rogers in the US, its absence in the UK didn't diminish the show's success. Instead, it created a sense of mystery and anticipation, with fans eventually rewarded for their patience. Today, the pilot is recognized as an essential part of the Buck Rogers legacy, not only for its narrative significance but also for its role in bridging the gap between cinema and television. Its eventual release in the UK served as a reminder of the global reach of Buck Rogers and the enduring appeal of his story, even across different viewing formats and timelines. The glitzy, futuristic world of Buck Rogers in the 25th century may have dazzled audiences, but behind the scenes, the production was anything but smooth. Like many ambitious projects, the show grappled with creative differences, personality clashes, and logistical challenges that occasionally threatened to overshadow the on-screen magic. From Gerard's dissatisfaction with the series' direction to Erin Gray's initial reluctance to commit, the road to creating Buck Rogers was as tumultuous as it was fascinating. Gerard, who played the titular Buck Rogers, was not shy about voicing his opinions, especially when it came to the scripts. From the start, Gerard had a clear vision for the character and the series as a whole. He believed Buck Rogers should have a serious tone, with thought-provoking storylines that explored ethical dilemmas and the cultural shifts of the 25th century. However, the show's producers leaned toward a lighter, more comedic tone, aiming to appeal to a broad, family-friendly audience. This disconnect led to frequent clashes. Gerard often rewrote his own lines, refusing to deliver dialogue he felt undermined Buck's integrity. While his commitment to the role was admirable, it created friction with the writers and producers, many of whom saw his actions as overstepping boundaries. Gerard's dissatisfaction reached a boiling point during the first season. Writers and Collins and Alan Brennert eventually left the show, citing frustration with Gerard's insistence on altering scripts. The network, NBC, even threatened legal action against Gerard if he continued disrupting production. Despite these challenges, Gerard's influence was undeniable, and his push for a more serious tone ultimately shaped much of the second season, though it came too late to save the series from cancellation. Erin Gray, who played the poised and capable Colonel Wilma Deering, brought an essential balance to the show's dynamic. Her character was intelligent, authoritative, and an equal to Buck, a rarity for female roles in sci-fi at the time. However, Gray's involvement in the series wasn't a given. After appearing in the theatrical pilot, Gray initially declined the offer to join the TV series. At the time, she was weighing other opportunities and wasn't convinced that committing to a weekly television role was the right move for her career. Her hesitation created uncertainty for the production team, who viewed Wilma as a central figure in Buck's story. When Gray eventually reconsidered and signed on, she brought professionalism and gravitas to the role. However, even after joining, she faced her own challenges on set. Producers insisted she dye her naturally brunette hair blonde to fit their vision of Wilma's look, an aesthetic choice Gray strongly disliked. This change, along with the occasional sidelining of her character in favor of Buck-centric plots, added to the difficulties she experienced during the first season. The dynamic between Gerard and Gray was another source of behind-the-scenes tension. While their on-screen chemistry was undeniable, reports suggest that their working relationship wasn't always smooth. Creative disagreements and differing visions for their characters occasionally created friction. However, both actors were professionals who managed to set aside their differences to deliver compelling performances. The show's ambitious production schedule only added to the strain. Filming a sci-fi series in the late 1970s required extensive special effects, elaborate set designs, and complex stunts, all of which demanded long hours and meticulous coordination. These pressures often left cast and crew members exhausted, amplifying existing frustrations. Few characters in science fiction have had as profound and lasting an impact as Buck Rogers. From his earliest days in pulp magazines to his big-screen adventures and television triumphs, Buck Rogers has not only entertained audiences but also shaped the evolution of the sci-fi genre. The influences of Buck Rogers in the 25th century can be felt across modern science fiction, touching everything from storytelling techniques to world-building and design. One of Buck Rogers' most enduring contributions to sci-fi is its imaginative portrayal of futuristic technology. The series dazzled audiences with gadgets like laser pistols, wrist communicators, and holographic displays, setting the standard for what a technologically advanced future could look like. These innovations weren't just props, they were integral to the storytelling, often serving as tools that enabled Buck to navigate the challenges of the 25th century. The concept of wearable communication devices, for example, has become a staple of the genre, influencing everything from Star Trek's communicators to the modern smartphone. Similarly, the show's depiction of space travel, from the sleek Ranger 3 shuttle to the Searcher spaceship, inspired countless iterations of interstellar vehicles in subsequent sci-fi works. The appeal of Buck Rogers' tech wasn't just its functionality but its optimism. The show presented a future where humanity's ingenuity had overcome countless challenges, reflecting a hopeful vision of what our own future could hold. This aspirational quality continues to resonate in modern sci-fi, where advanced technology often symbolizes progress and possibility. Another groundbreaking aspect of Buck Rogers was its exploration of interstellar politics. The series delved into the complexities of a galaxy populated by diverse factions, from Earth's Directorate to the Draconian Empire led by Princess Ardala. These narratives added depth to the series, portraying a universe where political alliances, cultural differences, and power struggles shaped the characters' journeys. This approach influenced many subsequent sci-fi franchises, including Star Wars and Babylon 5, which also built rich, interconnected worlds defined by political intrigue and interstellar diplomacy. The idea of a lone hero in navigating these complex societies, often mediating between warring factions or standing up against oppressive regimes, remains a hallmark of the genre. Buck Rogers himself became the blueprint for the modern sci-fi hero. As a 20th-century man thrust into an unfamiliar future, he embodied the everyman archetype, someone who uses courage, resourcefulness, and a strong moral compass to overcome extraordinary challenges. This trope has since become a staple of the genre, seen in characters like Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy, John Crichton in Farscape, and even Captain Malcolm Reynolds in Firefly. Each of these heroes, like Buck, is a fish out of water, navigating unfamiliar territories with wit, determination, and humanity. The episodic nature of Buck Rogers in the 25th century also influenced the structure of modern sci-fi series. Each episode presented a self-contained adventure while contributing to the broader narrative of Buck's journey. This balance between episodic and serialized storytelling has become a hallmark of successful sci-fi shows. From Star Trek to The Mandalorian, Buck Rogers' adventures showcased a universe teeming with danger, mystery, and wonder. Whether battling rogue AIs, uncovering alien secrets, or thwarting intergalactic schemes, Buck's exploits captured the boundless possibilities of space exploration. This sense of limitless adventure continues to inspire creators, ensuring that every new sci-fi series carries a spark of Buck Rogers' legacy. Though Buck Rogers in the 25th century lasted just 2 seasons, its cultural impact extended far beyond the small screen. The show sparked a merchandising frenzy, creating a treasure trove of collectibles that allowed fans to bring a piece of the 25th century into their homes. From action figures to lunchboxes, the series spawned an array of items that remain beloved by sci-fi enthusiasts and collectors to this day. At the heart of the Buck Rogers merchandise empire were the action figures. Produced by Mego Corporation, these figures captured the show's most iconic characters, including Buck Rogers, Colonel Wilma Deering, Princess Ardala, and the ever-popular Tweaky. Each figure came with detailed costumes and accessories, reflecting the show's futuristic aesthetic. The figures weren't just toys, they were a way for fans, particularly younger ones, to immerse themselves in the adventures of Buck and his crew. Children could recreate scenes from their favorite episodes or invent entirely new storylines, turning their living rooms into intergalactic battlegrounds. For fans who wanted to show off their love for Buck Rogers at school or work, the series offered themed lunchboxes and thermoses. These colorful items featured vibrant artwork of Buck, Wilma, and their adventures, making them a must-have for young sci-fi aficionados in the 1980s. The popularity of these lunchboxes wasn't just about utility, they were a status symbol for fans, a way to connect with others who shared their passion for futuristic adventures. Even today, collectors cherish these items for their nostalgic value, with pristine examples considered prized pieces of 1980s memorabilia. The show's merchandise extended into other realms, including posters that adorned bedroom walls, comic book adaptations that expanded on Buck's adventures, and board games that turned his interstellar exploits into engaging family activities. The Buck Rogers comic books, produced as part of the show's promotional efforts, featured vibrant artwork and adventurous storylines that brought new dimensions to the series. Meanwhile, the board games allowed fans to step into Buck's shoes, navigating space battles, solving puzzles, and outwitting foes, all from the comfort of their homes. For decades, fans of Buck Rogers in the 25th century have been asking the same question: will this iconic hero ever make his way back to the screen? While the original series left a lasting impression, the story of Buck Rogers seems tailor-made for a modern revival. From whispers of reboots to high-profile names expressing interest, the dream of bringing Buck back has been tantalizingly close yet frustratingly out of reach. Talk of a Buck Rogers reboot has circulated almost since the original series ended in 1981. As sci-fi surged in popularity with franchises like Star Trek and Star Wars, it seemed inevitable that Buck's adventures would be revisited. However, despite countless rumors, the hero's return has remained elusive. The 1990s saw the first serious discussions of a revival. Several studios toyed with the idea of a feature film or a new television series, but nothing came to fruition. The early 2000s brought another wave of speculation, fueled by advancements in special effects and a renewed interest in classic properties. Once again, the stars didn't align that in recent years, several high-profile figures have been linked to potential Buck Rogers projects. Visionary creator Frank Miller, Sin City, 300, was rumored to be developing a darker, grittier take on the character. While the idea intrigued fans, the project never moved beyond the planning stages. More recently, Hollywood heavyweight George Clooney has been associated with a Buck Rogers reboot. In 2021, reports surfaced that Clooney and his production company were exploring a new adaptation, with Clooney potentially starring or taking on a behind-the-scenes role. The announcement generated excitement, but as of now, there's been no confirmation of the project moving forward. The challenges of rebooting Buck Rogers lie in balancing nostalgia with modern sensibilities. On one hand, fans expect the charm, adventure, and optimism that defined the original series. On the other, any new adaptation must resonate with contemporary audiences, who are accustomed to complex narratives and cutting-edge visuals. There's also the question of tone. Should a reboot stay true to the campy fun of the 1979 series, or should it embrace a darker, more serious approach like Battlestar Galactica's successful revival? Striking the right balance is no small task, and studios may be hesitant to take on such a high-stakes gamble. Despite these challenges, the timing for a Buck Rogers reboot has never been better. The enduring popularity of sci-fi franchises like The Mandalorian, Dune, and Star Trek, Strange New Worlds shows that audiences have an insatiable appetite for stories set in space. With the right creative team, a Buck Rogers revival could tap into this enthusiasm while offering something fresh and unique. With today's cutting-edge technology, a 25th-century revival could truly blow us away. The question is, when will Buck make his comeback? And there you have it, 19 fascinating facts about Buck Rogers in the 25th century. We hope this journey into the past reignited your love for this iconic series. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your favorite Buck Rogers moments in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the stars.